Hi there. Thanks for joining in for this video today. I'm kind of excited that I'm getting to share some of these things. I've been praying on this and really thinking about it for a while now, and I've gone back and forth between whether I should make a video about this or whether I shouldn't. And for a while, it was not leaving my mind, and then finally it did, and I was at peace with, like, okay, maybe I don't have to do it. And then it's just like God brought it right back around just in time for the holiday. So I first just want to start off by saying that this video is solely my perspective as a Christian. If you saw the title, it's why I don't celebrate Christmas as a Christian. And I think that this is something that is quite difficult to speak about. And for that reason, I think that it's that much more important that I do speak out about it. As I was thinking about what to say, there was just so much anxiety around it. And I was like, God, like, why do I feel this imaginary pressure from people like that it's just not going to be received? And I think that's definitely why I want to speak on this. So anyways, here are 5 reasons that I've put together, 5 general reasons I've put together as to why I don't celebrate Christmas as a Christian. And firstly, Christmas is seen as a Christian holiday, right? So how can you be Christian and not celebrate Christmas, especially if Christianity is centered around the fact that Jesus came as God in the flesh to earth, to this world. But you know, there's a lot of research out there, historical findings, as well as videos out there that explain the origins of Christmas. I was about to say Christianity, the origins of Christmas. But I'm not going to go into depth in that. I'm just going to share my perspective as one Christian out here, out of the very many who does not celebrate Christmas. So my first reason actually has to do with the commercialization of the occasion. A few years ago, it really was starting to get to me how commercialized this holiday is, how just things just take this huge turn, whether it's on the radio or whether it's like on TV, advertisements in stores, and everything is tailored toward this Christmas holiday. And it's like, buy these things, get these deals, give to your loved ones and whatnot. And while Christmas is posed as this time to give and to share with others, which I think is great, you definitely should show gratitude. I also believe it's a time of a lot of indulgence and a lot of pressure also to give. And I don't believe that that's the right nature in which we should be giving to other people in the first place. It shouldn't be from a place of obligation. And I don't think that it should be so hyped in the way that it is in advertising. I think that a lot of people are more so thinking about their pockets, more so. Speaking of the corporations, I think they're thinking about their pockets and how much gain they're gonna have in this season. And I think that's very, very contrary to what it means to be a Christian. I think it's very contrary to how God even deals with us. I don't think any of that should be part of it. So to me, it doesn't mix with what it means to be a Christian for me. Of course, there are individuals who say that Jesus is the reason for the season, and they're not necessarily indulging in all of this shopping and whatnot, that's great. They're living according to what they believe and are not giving into the commercialization. But I will say that that's something that can't be ignored, and I definitely think it's a huge part of the Christmas season, at least in this 21st century. So my second reason for not celebrating Christmas is actually tied into that phrase that people say, Jesus is the reason for the season. So in looking into history and also just seeing other reports on what this time of year has always been throughout the centuries, Christmas has not always been a part of that. And that was something that was very eye-opening for me when I realized that a few years ago. And I'm not going to go into too much detail. Again, like I mentioned, there's a ton of videos out there that talk in more depth about those things, and that's not really what I want to focus on this video. But it really did open my eyes as a believer to see that this time, this final week of December, or this ending period of the season, is something that was celebrated by pagans, people who don't even worship God as God. They worship nature, the earth, the sun being the chief god of nature. And it just so happens that Christmas falls into that period of the winter solstice. And just briefly, again, sharing little nuggets here and there that you could go research on your own. But the reason December 25th is chosen, and that period of time, is because this is around the time when the winter solstice occurs, right? The shortest day of the year. But then after the winter solstice, the days start to lengthen again, right? The sun starts to come out a little bit, or be seen a bit longer. And so around December 25th is when that significant lengthening of days is noticed, and therefore it's seen as the return of the sun god, like the rebirth, or the reign of the sun god. And that really, when I realized that, it didn't just go in one ear out the other, like, oh, okay, well, that's what it used to be, but now it's this, now it's Christmas. As a Christian, it's very important to me to know what things God has put in place and what things man have put in place. And when I recognized that this was initially a pagan festivity, a pagan time of celebration, I was curious as to how it even became a Christian holiday. And I know that during the time of the Roman Empire, there was a huge pagan community there. Christianity was something that actually was not favored, as we see even how Christ was treated. That was under the Roman government. Of course, the Jewish nation of the time are the ones who pushed for his crucifixion, but it's the Roman government that was ruling at the time. And thereafter, in the time of the Roman Empire, Christianity was not something that was praised. And so in doing more reading and research, I saw that in order to win the Christians over and also kind of have this happy medium with the pagans, they took on this celebration from the pagans and then rebranded it in a way to say that it was a Christian holiday, but yet it was still pagan. And that didn't sit well with me at all. I don't believe that God just wants us to compromise in any way. I do think that there are things that he's put in place, and he wants us to stand apart. He wants us to stick to the things that he has shown us. And granted, a lot of people are hearing more about Jesus in this time. A lot of people are hearing more about Christianity, and I believe that God is able to use any opportunity. At the same time, I also believe that as Christians, if you're aware of the origins of what this was, then I think that we have a different responsibility, and even a different expectation as to how we move forward. I don't think God is pleased with just numbers, like just a bunch of people celebrating Christmas, but I think he is more concerned about how we are living, day to day, and whether our lifestyle really shows as to whether we are his or not. So during this time, some things that I do, I still very much ask God to lead me into opportunities to share with others, whether it's in resources that they need or just talking to people. This is something that I try to be mindful of year round, whether it's known of my friends or my family. These are things that I just do in my private time when I'm going about my day and I have opportunities to help others. And so I don't stop doing that during this season just because it's like the Christmas season. But that's definitely not my reasoning for giving. So my third reason for not celebrating Christmas has to do with the preference the government seems to have in recognizing Christmas and Christian holidays in general. That's something that I don't really think should be happening. Like, for instance, I'm sure there are so many other holidays that other religions have, and I don't think it's given as much weight in terms of vacation time, in terms of having, just being celebrated on a governmental level. And I think that could be problematic. As a Christian, you might be like, oh, well, that's a good thing. You're a Christian and they're favoring you. But when it comes to religious freedom and even religious equality, I don't believe that Christianity should be given more weight than other religions. Yes, in the Old Testament, and I say that to mean like before Christ came, there was more of a theocracy in that you saw godly elements in the government and whatnot, and that's because it was set up that way. But since the sanctuary service is different, since Christ came, that priesthood moved from the earth to heaven. I don't believe that government should be so entangled with Christian principles and practices, and I just think it's quite frankly a bit unfair to others. Everybody's entitled to have their own opinion, to believe what they believe, to have their own religion. I by no means believe that these other religions are correct per se, but I do believe that these individuals have a right to believe something else and to not feel like it's inferior because of what the government is choosing to put on a pedestal. I think that can also be very dangerous in the sense that it can be abused as well. I think if there is more favoritism toward Christian policies, that it could lead to persecution of those who do not agree with those practices. And even for someone like me, like for instance, not celebrating Christmas, I think that's something that can be seen in a negative light, even by these public institutions that claim not to have any type of religious affiliation. So my fourth reason for not celebrating Christmas has to do with the enchantment around Christmas. I feel like it's a very enchanting and alluring time of year, whether it's in the music, which the music is beautiful, but also, the lights, the colors, again, the advertisements, but that's kind of like a different side of it. I think it's just very enchanting and very alluring, and it does make it kind of difficult to stay away from. Like, it's catchy, it's appealing to all the senses, whether it's the food, again, the music, what you see, and those are some good aspects. I think things that are joyous and things that bring you to more godliness should be appealing to the senses. At the same time, I think when something relies so much on appealing to the senses in that way, for me, it's a red flag. It's like, okay, like, what are you trying to win me over to, really? Is it just to win me over to this holiday, or is it really to win me over to God? And when it comes to God, I don't think he's trying to win over anybody through these type of enchantments. With God, it's really just like the straight testimony, like, this is who God is, this is who he is for you, and take it or leave it. Choose if you want to follow him or don't. But with Christmas, I do see a lot of these elements, and I think it's very much catered to kids. Even if we look at the fictitious characters that come along with the Christmas holiday, Santa Claus, and his whole shebang there, it's very much catered to the kids, and I think that it makes it difficult for parents, whether they're Christian, whether they're Muslim, whether they're Hindu. Like, if they don't celebrate Christmas, I think for their kids, it looks like something that they're missing out on because it's so, it's just so appealing. And I think a lot of parents tend to just kind of give in to some of the things. They may not say that it's like for Jesus or anything, but they'll still put up a tree and light up their house and have, a Christmas party and all these things. And I just don't think that people should be emotionally pressured in that way. I think it's very unfair a lot of us aren't really aware of how easily we're swayed by our emotions. So when tactics are used to drive emotion-led decisions, that bothers me. So that's another reason why I don't celebrate Christmas. I have a right to decide on how I act on my emotions, right? Like, yeah, this music is beautiful and everything, but I'm intellectually aware of the origin of Christmas, and therefore I don't want to partake in it. So that's one reason. And again, when it comes to like targeting the kids like that, it just reminds me of like drug companies, or like even like unhealthy foods or whatever, that have all of these commercials and advertisements that are definitely like targeting children. And then, it just makes it really difficult as parents, I think, to say no. Which actually brings me to my fifth and final reason for not celebrating Christmas, which is the shaming that comes along with not celebrating Christmas, the ogre-like picture that is painted of those that do not celebrate Christmas. So I'm talking about the Grinch story. I'm talking about Ebenezer Scrooge. Christmas stories that I have loved and watched and, find very funny and have this lovely, happy ending. But again, even given some of the anxiety that I might have had in making a video like this, I think that there is this very ugly picture painted of people who don't celebrate Christmas. Like they don't have love in them. They don't know how to love other people. They've been hurt. They're dark. They're like unfriendly. I think that image that has been created of those who don't celebrate Christmas is very unfair. And I think, again, it kind of ties into that enchantment side, where it's like, oh, like all these pretty and flashy things, and then there's like other dark side if you don't want to partake. That those movies or those stories are very much I think targeted toward just people who don't want to celebrate Christmas, perhaps even people within the Christian community who don't want to celebrate, because I don't think it was talking about like a Muslim person who didn't want to celebrate, or a Buddhist. But like I definitely don't consider myself an Ebenezer Scrooge, you know what I mean? And I think that those types of storylines make me feel like others are going to perceive me that way, even if they've spoken to me before, even if they've had a conversation and have made their own assessment of me. Naturally, you're just going to think of that reference and be like, oh, people who don't celebrate Christmas are just grouches. And I think that's very unfair. Again, going back to parents who don't want their kids to partake in these things because they recognize what's behind it, or they just don't agree with all of the circumstances surrounding it. They're not Scrooges either, and it's a very in-your-face holiday in schools, at work, at the workplace, and everything. And I think it just makes it really hard to be able to have your own personal opinion around it. So those are my 5 reasons why I don't celebrate Christmas. And just to finish off, I wanted to share a little bit of my reasoning as to why I made a video like this. So firstly, I wanted to just speak to those of you who may not be Christian and have felt pressured to celebrate Christmas. I want to just let you know that you really don't have to. You're not going to be seen, at least by me, you're not going to be seen as a Scrooge or as a Grinch or anything like that. You are entitled to your own opinion, and you don't need to celebrate. And I think that's actually, it might be a little bit shocking to some of you. I know I have many friends actually who aren't Christian, and I've heard them say like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go get my Christmas gift soon or whatever, and I'm like, what, but again, it's that social pressure, and I want to be here to tell you that you don't have to give into that. My second reason actually had to do with anyone who was just wondering like if there were Christians out there who don't celebrate Christmas. Yeah, I'm one of those people, and I'm sure there are many out there, and I just want to be able to be a voice for those who may not have spoken up on that. And the last thing that I want to say is, yes, this has been a very, very difficult year for every single human being on this planet. I think a lot of good has come out of it, but I also think there's been a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, and many of us are just trying to hold on to any semblance of tradition and normalcy. And while this year has been one of hardship and, a lot of changes, I also think that we should recognize that it was a year of revelation. A lot of things came to the forefront, a lot of injustices, and a lot of things that were behind the scenes have been brought to light. And I didn't want to wait until next year to make a video like this. Again, it was on my heart very strongly. And seeing that it's 2020, I said, might as well just bring a little bit more light to the end of this year for anyone who's maybe been contemplating on what Christmas really means. So this is just in the spirit of revelation, in the spirit of being aware of the truth behind some things, and knowing that you have the option to make your own choices based on those judgments. So I'm wishing all of you a very blessed day, a blessed end of the year, and to really just take some time to think on these things and think about the type of person that you want to be as you go about your life. God bless.